Hello and welcome to my kitchen. We're bringing the garden into the kitchen again today. I'm going to show you how to use herbs to make delicious Italian flatbread. The variation I'm making uses thyme. While this recipe uses thyme, it doesn't take much time as far as baking fresh bread goes. This recipe usually takes me about 2.5 hours, and that's from the time I start to the time that it goes on the table. But first, there's a few things you'll need. So let's get hydrating that yeast. We hydrate yeast because it makes it more effective once it is in the bread making process. If you just put the dried yeast in without rehydrating it first, it will still work, but it won't make as nice a dough. It won't be as fluffy and as tasty. So let's do that now. Basically what you're doing is these guys are in a stasis pod, if you like, and you're going to bring them back to life, and they're going to eat the sugars and the starches in the flour, and they're going to create those little holes that make bread fluffy. So tip that straight into the lukewarm water. I usually use just the hot tap and the cold tap together until I get a nice temperature, and then measure out my 300 scant mils. I'm just going to use a metal spoon to lightly stir that yeast in. You'll see that the mixture is sort of a milky colour, I guess. Make sure that they're all in the mixture and not down the bottom. See, and hopefully by the time we've finished mixing together our flour and salt, there will be a light froth on top of there, which will tell me that the yeast is viable. Here's my flour, 450 grams. And here's my salt, 2 teaspoons. Add those together. Grab a wooden spoon and mix them all in. You don't want salty patches in your bread. After I've mixed those in, I'm going to create a well in the middle. Now all that means is moving all the flour to the sides, so that when I pour my ingredients in, my wet ingredients, they're going to go into that well in the centre of the flour. So now the yeast is slightly frothy. I can see different colours when I move the spoon, just between like a slight milky froth and the milky dark colour from before. So I'm going to pour that right into the centre of my well. I'm then going to get my 4 tablespoons of olive oil. That noise outside is my children playing. Impossible to keep children that age quiet while you do some filming. So 4 tablespoons of olive oil. And now I'm going to simply stir this until it starts to make a dough. Now I've washed my hands and scrubbed my fingernails, because when you're kneading dough you need to make sure that your hands are completely clean, obviously. That's forming nicely into a dough. Now you can see I can't really stir it anymore, so I'm going to peel it off the spoon. Oops, should have used some of my flour. I'm just going to use that now, sprinkle it on the board, get some on my hands, scrape off the dough from that spoon, and sprinkle on some more flour, rubbing it on my hands as I go so that the dough doesn't stick to my hands. Alright, once I've got my board nicely floured and my hands nicely floured, I'm just going to lift that nice soft dough out, tip out any crumbs onto the top, they'll be absorbed into the dough, and then I'm going to knead it until it becomes smooth and elastic. Right now it's not very smooth, it's a little bit lumpy, and you can see if I pull it, it just comes apart. cleaned your metal bowl, pour some olive oil around the sides and then swirl it until you get a pretty even coating. This will just stop the dough from sticking to the bowl. And all this olive oil makes a lovely soft dough. Take your ball of dough, pop it in there. Olive oil won't hurt it. Clean tea towel. I've just wet this clean tea towel so that we can create a nice humid environment for the yeast, but we want to cover it because we don't want any animals or birds taking an interest. And trust me, I have lots of birds around here who would love to get their hands on this bowl. Alright, I'm going to go and put this in the sun until the dough more than doubles in size. Usually that's about 20 minutes, half an hour, but I'll keep checking on it. It's a bit cooler today, so it could take 45 minutes. I'm guessing 45 minutes. Let's see how I go. Now that I've worked that into a perfectly imperfect disc of about 30 centimeters in diameter, I am going to leave that, and while I leave that, it's going to continue to rise. So I'm going to put the oven on to 200 degrees. Always check the oven before you put it on. But the other thing I've got to do is I've got to put my pizza stone in the oven, or if you're using a heavy metal baking sheet, put that in the oven before it starts heating up. You want that stone or sheet as hot as possible because that will give you a lovely crunch on the base of the bread. So there we go, that's going to continue to rise while I wait for the oven to preheat, and then we'll drizzle on the last tablespoon of olive oil. Look at that golden brown flatbread. I'll pop that there. It's quite easy to chop. All you need is a bread knife and And I'm going to leave that to cool for a minute, but when I chop it up, I'll just chop it into triangles, and then we'll have some with our soup. Thanks for watching. Feel free to put any comments or questions down below, and I'll see you next time.